to rebuild the country?
When you mean frozen assets, you mean stolen assets, right?
I mean what I said. I mean exactly what I said. Frozen assets under sanctions delivered to the Iranian government because of its development of a nuclear weapons program. Go ahead.
Don't be too cowardly. Stolen assets. What was an Iranian nuclear weapons program? Where's your evidence of this? Where did we have a nuclear weapons program?
I'm just asking you.
Source your claim.
Answer the question if you would.
Claim.
Doesn't Iran need the money that was promised to Iran in the Memorandum of Understanding or committed to Iran if peace talks continue? Doesn't Iran need that money to rebuild the country?
First, source your claim. When did Iran have a nuclear weapons program?
What's up, everybody? Jackson here. And this Professor Mohammad Marandi interview covers a specific disputed diplomatic agreement described here as a Memorandum of Understanding between Iran and the US regarding a passage through the Strait of Hormuz. I want to flag something up front. This references a specific, fairly recent diplomatic document whose exact terms I can't independently verify from what's in this clip alone. So I'm going to treat the specifics of what it actually says with real caution rather than accepting either side's characterization at face value. There's also a specific claim in here about Iran's nuclear program that needs some correction. Stick with me, get that like in, get subscribed, because precision matters, especially when the underlying document itself is in dispute. Now let's get into it.
It's very difficult for you to tolerate anything that goes against your narrative, isn't it? When you mean frozen assets, you mean stolen assets, right?
I mean what I said. I mean exactly what I said. Frozen assets under sanctions delivered to the Iranian government because of its development of a nuclear weapons program. Go ahead.
Don't be too cowardly. Stolen assets. What was an Iranian nuclear weapons program? Where's your evidence of this? You're not very much of a journalist, are you? Iran did not violate the MOU. The United States has been violating the MOU on multiple levels.
Professor Mohammad Marandi is taking his full court pressure on the press worldwide as he sits down with Sarah Ferguson from Australia's ABC show 7:30, and he does not let up. She tries to formulate these questions in a very manipulative way. Professor Marandi calls that out instantly. And the longer this interview went on, the more heated and intense it got.
What right does Iran have to hold the rest of the world to ransom by preventing oil shipments passing through the Straits of Hormuz?
Excuse me, I think it was the United States that waged war against Iran, and your government supported it. They did nothing they said nothing in condemnation. The United States slaughtered our children. The United States murdered our leaders. The United States destroyed our critical infrastructure along with the genocidal Zionist regime that your government loves. And so you're in no position to critique Iran. But when we finally had an MOU with the Trump regime, in Article 5 of that MOU, the movement through the Strait of Hormuz is to be managed during the period when the MOU is valid by the Iranians. And the Americans, in violation of the MOU, created their own corridor. The Iranians warned them and warned ships for days, and they ignored Iran until ultimately Iran was forced to strike those ships so that other ships did not disobey. They have to go through the corridor that Iran has determined for them. And this is not the only violation of the Trump regime. The Trump regime has failed, in accordance with MOU, to hand over stolen Iranian assets. It has failed to force the Israeli regime to leave Lebanon and to stop the slaughter. It has continued to threaten to murder Iranians, to wipe out the country, and to slaughter its leaders in violation of a commitment in the MOU. So the United States is violating every single element of the MOU,
now,
not Iran.
If I may, yes, if I may,
the United States reversed.
That's a long answer.
The United States also reversed its removal of sanctions on the Iranian oil sector.
Let me just come in because the MOU did not say that about the Strait of Hormuz. But let me ask you this: Will Iran ever return to the pre-war situation where ships had free passage through the Strait of Hormuz?
No, indeed, the MOU does say that it is Iran that will normalize the passage through the Strait of Hormuz, and in collaboration with Oman, they will determine how things will be carried out in future. Iran wants the passage of goods and services products to move through the Strait of Hormuz, because that's how our economy and the economy of our region grows.
Is the Strait of...
We didn't wage war.
Sarah seems to be under the impression that if you're a country that's winning a war in which you were attacked, you can't then use what you have on your side as leverage in regards to controlling the Strait of Hormuz, and of course them starting to build a nuclear stockpile. The only reason we don't bother or have anything negative publicly to say about North Korea anymore is because we know now for a fact that they have nukes. So having those type of toys makes you untouchable by the West.
Is the Strait of Hormuz now even bigger leverage for Iran than the development of its nuclear program?
Well, first of all, Iran's nuclear program is legal. The United States attack on Iran and the destruction of parts of Iran's nuclear program was illegal and violation of international law, which your government supported the violation of international law, just as it supports genocide in Palestine. But with regards to the Strait of Hormuz, if you recall, before the United States attacked, the United States and the Israeli regime attacked Iran, the Strait of Hormuz was open, and the Iranians had no interest in controlling it. Right now, the Iranians want to make sure they control it in future, so that the United States can never again use the Persian Gulf as a platform to attacking our country. The assaults that we saw last night and the night before all came from U.S. bases or were enabled by the U.S. presence in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, the Emirates, and Kuwait. Without its presence in these countries, last night's attacks wouldn't have happened. So as long as the Trump regime and the Zionist regime are a threat to Iran's national security, Iran will maintain a very heavy presence in the Strait of Hormuz.
Now let's jump straight to the end of it, where Sarah reads a question that was written specifically, hoping that he doesn't challenge it whatsoever. But of course, Professor Marandi does just that.
Let me ask you this. However bold your statements are in defense of Iran, it's still a country in the midst of an economic crisis. Many of the population, as much as 40% of the population, lives below the poverty line. The war has badly damaged your industrial base. Don't the people of Iran deserve a chance for peace?
Well, that's your problem, isn't it? Your aggression.
I think the question is about the people of Iran. I'm asking you a question about whether the people of Iran deserve a chance for peace and to establish some economic future for the country.
It's very difficult for you to tolerate anything that goes against your narrative, isn't it? It is your problem because you have supported aggression against Iran. If the Iranian people are suffering, it is because wars that your regime has helped enable by supporting Trump, by supporting the United States. 3 wars have been imposed upon our country for the last 47 years. All 3 were supported by the United States, and in all 3, the United States was directly involved. The maximum pressure sanctions on the Iranian people are because Iran supports the Palestinian people, while your government supports the genocide.
Let me ask you a question, if I may. Let me ask you a question about those sanctions. The sanctions that were imposed on Iran by the European Union and the United States were in relation to Iran's development of a nuclear weapons program. Now, as things stand, if the conflict continues, the USA will not deliver the billions of dollars in unfrozen assets to Iran, as was agreed under the terms of the MOU. Doesn't Iran need that cash to rebuild the country?
When you mean frozen assets, you mean stolen assets, right?
I mean what I said. Exactly what I said. Frozen assets under sanctions delivered to the Iranian government because of its development of a nuclear weapons program. Go ahead.
Don't be too cowardly. Stolen assets. What was an Iranian nuclear weapons program? Where's your evidence of this? Where did we have a nuclear weapons program?
I'm just asking you.
Source your claim.
Answer the question if you would.
Claim.
Doesn't Iran need the money that was promised to Iran in the Memorandum of Understanding or committed to Iran if peace talks continue? Doesn't Iran need that money to rebuild the country?
First, source your claim. When did Iran have a nuclear weapons program?
We're not going to get into a debate about that because we've got about a minute left to discuss. I want to stick to the subjects of the day. That is the breach of the MOU by Iran attacking ships using the southern corridor through the Strait of Hormuz. I want to get one thing clear, that Iran will continue to attack ships who use that southern channel through the Strait of Hormuz close to Oman.
You're not very much of a journalist, are you? Iran did not violate the MOU. The United States has been violating the MOU on multiple levels from the beginning, starting from Article 1 and including Article 5 with regards to the Strait of Hormuz. You know this, I know this, everyone knows this. But since you are Australian and you are affiliated to the state, and since you've been supporting genocide in Gaza, I don't expect anything from you.
Mohammad Marandi, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Smoked her boots. You see how she couldn't deviate from the question that was written for her? Because her job is not actually to get information. Her job is to push propaganda and create a narrative, hoping that Professor Marandi wouldn't have challenged the premise. But clearly she hasn't.
Let me start with the claim that needs the most direct correction. When pressed on Iran's nuclear program, Marandi repeatedly demanded evidence that one ever existed, framing it as an unfounded accusation. That's not an accurate framing of the historical record. The International Atomic Energy Agency has documented across multiple reports going back decades evidence of nuclear weapons-related research and activities in Iran prior to 2003, and unresolved questions about undeclared nuclear material and activities have persisted in IAEA reporting for years since. That's separate from the question of whether Iran currently has an active weapons program, which is genuinely disputed, with US intelligence assessments in recent years generally concluding Iran has not restarted a weapons program specifically, even while continuing to expand uranium enrichment capacity. Flatly asking, "Where's your evidence?" as though no documentation exists, misrepresents a long, well-documented international monitoring history, even though the narrower question of current weaponization intent remains legitimately contested. Now, on the specific Memorandum of Understanding and its terms, including the claim that Article 5 assigns Iran and Oman responsibility for managing Strait of Hormuz passage, I don't have independent verification of this specific agreement's actual text, and given how consequential the claim is, whether the US or Iran is in breach of a signed diplomatic document, this is exactly the kind of claim that needs to be checked directly against the actual published text of the agreement, rather than accepted from either party's characterization in a heated interview. I'd encourage looking up the primary document directly before treating either side's reading of Article 5 as settled. On the claim about continued strikes in Lebanon following a ceasefire and a cumulative death toll in the thousands since that agreement was reached, that's the kind of specific, dated claim worth checking against independent, contemporaneous reporting on the Lebanon ceasefire's actual implementation and any documented violations, since ceasefire compliance disputes are common in this region and get characterized very differently by different parties. On the frozen Iranian assets described here as roughly $100 billion, whether that figure is accurate and whether frozen or stolen is the more accurate characterization depends on the specific legal basis for the asset. Freezes, which typically stem from sanctions tied to nuclear proliferation concerns and other specific violations, a legal process distinct from simple confiscation. It's worth checking the specific sanctions authorities and any court rulings related to these assets directly rather than accepting either framing. On the broader humanitarian point about Iranian poverty rates, roughly 40% of the population living below the poverty line. That's a serious human cost worth taking seriously, regardless of how you assign responsibility for the underlying sanctions and conflicts that produced it. Ordinary people bearing the economic cost of geopolitical disputes they didn't create is a real and recurring pattern worth acknowledging honestly. Here's what I leave you with. When a conversation centers on a specific named diplomatic document with specific numbered articles, the actual text of that document is the thing worth reading directly before accepting anyone's summary of what it says, especially when the summaries directly contradict each other this sharply. And on the nuclear program question specifically, the documented IAEA history deserves acknowledgement rather than being waved away as an unfounded accusation, even as the narrower question of current weapons intent remains genuinely disputed among serious analysts. So tell me, when a dispute hinges on the specific wording of a diplomatic agreement, do you think it's possible to get an honest reading from either side in a heated interview? Or does it always require going to the primary source yourself? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more of these breakdowns that flag what needs independent verification, get subscribed, because that's exactly what this channel is here for.